Hey everybody, I was recently listening to a great podcast by RPPR. If you haven't listened to them, you need to check them out, download their podcasts, and subscribe to them. But they were talking about using some smaller games within a game in an RPG to give some meaning and some weight to some of the other decisions besides combat that can come up. So, for example, lockpicking. And they were talking about using mazes and Sudoku puzzles and things like that. And I thought, I think I can develop some other things to add to what they had already started. So I started looking for a lockpicking mechanism. And so what I came up with are, we've got some cards, some locks here that are different colors that represent different difficulties. And so you take your lock. Let's say we got a green lock, and you, instead of rolling just your d20 or whatever to unlock the door, you actually put your lock down there, and then whoever's trying to unlock the door will use their set of lock picks to cover up this lock so that only 2 or 3 numbers are showing. One number would be illegal, and showing all 4 numbers would be illegal. But they're going to try and cover up or uncover the 2 numbers or 3 numbers at a time, and they will get so many turns. And so here we've got this chart here that we can see the different colors, and so you can either get 2 turns of the lockpick and try and get a sum between 10 and 17 for green, 3 turns here, 4 turns. And so the GM can say, I want you to hit a target number of 20, okay? And so that would take 3 turns on the green lockpick. So with 3 turns, I'm going to actually physically turn this to try and add up to 20. And so maybe on my first turn would be right here. And so that would give me 9. And so I've got to get 11 more. And so then turn 2 is here. That's going to be 6. So I had 9 and 6, that's 15. And then I turn it here to get 5 more to get me my 20. And so there it was 3 turns, 1, 2, 3, and I've picked that lock and I've made it through. So what this is meant to do is to actually give you a mini challenge that is comparable to what you're really doing in the game, or your character would be doing in the game, to pick this lock and to give some degree of skill and some tension, I guess, to unlocking a door. You know, if you're trying to unlock this door and all your friends are holding off the bad guys while you're trying to unlock the door, maybe the GM gives you 30 seconds to come up with the method to unlock this. And of course, if one green lock is too easy for you, you can get that too quickly. Maybe the GM could assign all 3 green locks and say, okay, you have to do all 3 green locks, you know, and you'll only get 30 seconds per round to try and do that. The first one you got to get an 18, the next one you got to get a 25, and the next one you got to get a 30 or something like that. So you can amp up the complexity of this, but I really just wanted to show you the mechanic for how it works. And it would be, I think it would be a fun way to add to your game rather than just rolling a d20 and saying, nope, the lock is done. So I also, in this deck of cards, decided I couldn't just stop there. I needed to give more, so I came up with a physical card challenge. So here's what we call skill targets. So let's say you're trying to make an acrobatics check, you know, and you're dodging around people. So, or you're trying to shoot an arrow through this really tiny space to hit that lever and turn on this great big machine or something. So again, rather than just rolling the d20 and that would be it, you've got 3 cards here that you're throwing towards the target, and as you throw them, okay, you're trying to cover up numbers. And the more numbers that you cover up, the better off that you are. So you're looking for like a low score. So the total on here, you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 points total on here. And the goal would be the GM running the game would say, well, you need to have, you know, if it's easy, maybe less than 40. Or if you want to make it insanely difficult, you have to have less than 10. And I would not throw, you know, from this close. That's just too close. You can easily cover that up. But maybe move your target card kind of, you know, 3 feet, 4 feet down the table and have the person throw from there, so it's a little bit more difficult to cover up those numbers. But that can represent a physical skill check. Okay, just a little mini challenge for you. In addition to that, I have this game called Connections. So in Connections, you have lots of cards that have miscellaneous configurations of these kind of things to build connections, lines basically, or line segments. And so what you're going to do is you're going to lay out a top card up here. See if I can get all of them on screen here. And then I'm going to lay out 1, 2, 3, and then leave a hole in the middle. And then, I'm going to have to back up the camera for just a second so you can see the full board. Let's see if we can get everything here. So we got this down here is kind of the starting place, and so you can see that yellow sticking out. That is the beginning of the connection. You can think of it as like connecting a current or something like that. Imagine you're rerouting power on a starship, right? So you have to make a total connection from here. Somehow there has to be a consistent connection that would go all the way up to this card. That card's facing the wrong direction, so I'm just going to flip it to start with. So the beginning space down here and the ending space are anchored, but these you can slide around like those sliding puzzles. So there is a, those puzzles you get at Christmas time, right? So, you could slide this card down and then slide this card over, so on and so forth, and then try and get that card up. And eventually what we might want to try and do is get to a place that would look like this. If I could rearrange it just quickly without, obviously you can't pick it up in the real game, but just for the sake of completion here, maybe eventually I could get to this solution where starting here, I go up, over, and then all the way up, and I've made it to my final destination. So that means I've made a full connection from beginning to end, and now I've rerouted the power on my starship. Or if you're playing, a detective investigation game, maybe these are the clues that you have, or they represent the clues. And if you can fit this together, then you are able to kind of Sherlock Holmes the mystery, and you get a lead that you can follow for the next thing. So this connections game can be used in many different scenarios, but again, it would be kind of a time-based component, so that maybe you already have your skill check that you roll for whatever, but you could add this in to build some tension and say, okay, you've only got 1 minute each round to try and put this puzzle together, and if you can figure out how this puzzle is going to go so that you can make the total connection, that's when you'll figure out where your next lead is. If you get it done in 2 rounds, you get a really good lead. If you get it done in 3 rounds, you get what you need, but you're still going to be missing some information. If you get it done in 4 or more rounds, if it takes you 4 or more minutes, then or segments of 30 seconds if you want, then you would get some false leads or something like that. So you could just use this to build some tension and still fail forward, right? So you would still get something that you need, a way to go in the game, but it would be better than just rolling a d20 and calling it a day. So again, didn't just stop there. Got 2 more games that can go along with this deck, and one of them is a magic duel, where this is just rock, paper, scissors, where you have one person who has all 5 elements, and then the other person, the GM maybe has all 5 elements, and each round the person secretly selects one card that they're going to play. And so maybe we would play like this, okay? And it's paper, rock, scissors, so that on each card you can see fire and lightning beat the earth here, okay? And so this is lightning beats earth, and so this would go to the GM, so maybe we'd slide it up closer to the GM so we know that they got that one. Then we play with the remaining 4 cards and continue to go all the way through until we're down to no cards. So we will play 5 rounds, and whoever's got the majority of 5 rounds would win that. So that's kind of like a magic duel. Again, if you're trying to counterspell something, instead of just rolling a d20 and saying I counterspelled it, you could play a quick round of magic duel here to see what happens. So there's a little bit of strategy, as you know that cards stay out and they stay up on the table and open so that people can see what's going on. Then you can kind of plan ahead based off of what cards have already been played. And then there's one last game in this deck that you can use, which is called Negotiation. So there are 2 sets of cards here. There's I guess I can start setting them this way again. They are the Negotiation and Confrontation cards. And so maybe you're trying to negotiate better prices, or you're trying to figure out the value of this rare painting, or maybe you're trying to talk the monsters down from attacking your party. But anytime that you have some sort of negotiation, you can play a modified version of War. This is, in essence, a single suit of cards. So you've got 2 through ace here. And what each side would do, so the GM and the player would have 5 cards in hand. So for the sake of this, I'll put, ooh, that's a pretty big hand right there. So there's my 5 cards for the player, and then the GM would, secretly have, take the top 5 here. Ooh, low cards there. The GM would secretly have 5 cards, and the player would have 5 cards that they would have in their hand that nobody else would see. Now you're going to play 3 haggling sessions with this. You're going to haggle 3 times. And so what a haggle is, or a haggling session, is a player is going to play, you're going to have your initial bid. So each player out of their hand of 5 is going to play 1 card. Okay, so I would put this card face down. The GM would pick a card to play, and it would go face down. And then you would both have your reveal at the same time to see what's going to happen. So we've got a jack and a 9. So right now with the initial bid, the player is winning. Now out of this hand of 5, the GM can choose to raise the stakes here basically, so that they can up the ante and play an additional card to try and beat the jack. And so the jack is worth 11, queen would be 12, king 13, ace 14, ace would be high. And so if the GM decided, okay, you know what, if I play this 3 like that, I'm going to beat this jack. Okay, so maybe the GM does that. Okay, well fine. The player gets a chance to also add to theirs, and maybe they say, you know what, I think I'm going to add again and go to a 4, and this can go on until somebody concedes. And so right now the player's winning, maybe the GM says, you know what, that's it, I concede. So that round, that haggling session, would go to the player. So these cards from the GM would be permanently discarded from their deck. Okay. Then with the remaining cards in hand, however many it is, in this case the GM has 3, the player has 3, they would play a second haggling session and then do the same thing. These cards, by the way, that won that first haggling session, those would go on the bottom of the player's deck to be recycled for later sessions. Okay, so now we would play a second haggling session with these 3 cards, and again you would do your initial bid, okay, like so, and then reveal your initial bid, and the player has that one won, and so this would get permanently discarded from the GM. This would go under the player's deck because the player won again, and then we would have initial bid one more time, and they both decide to up their ante so that you end up here, and because the player had such a good hand, they won all 3. So you can play that, so that was the player won 3 haggling sessions and knocked out several cards from the GM who got permanently out of the deck. So now they would go to a new round of 3 haggling sessions and choose 5 new cards to use for those 3 rounds. And so you play continues until one side is completely out of cards. You just keep playing as much as you can until you're out of cards. So you've got one suit, you've got 13 cards. Basically you have to eliminate the 13 cards of the other person, and then you have negotiated your way into whatever it is that you're trying to do. So these are just fun little kind of mini challenges that you can use in your role-playing games to add some flavor to what you're doing. I'm calling it the Encounter Enhancements deck. So check out a copy of the Encounter Enhancements deck along with the regular Encounter building cards if you'd like to add more to your role-playing games. Thanks.